Picture this: you rock up to a rental inspection in Perth, expecting maybe 10 or 15 people. You walk down the street and see a line snaking around the block. 92 people registered to view one. $650 a week property that is not a concert, that is not a Black Friday sale, that is just trying to find somewhere to bloody live in Perth right now. Perth's rental market has gone from one of Australia's most affordable to an absolute nightmare. Vacancy rates that were sitting at a catastrophic 0.6% just 2 years ago have barely budged. Rents have exploded by 86% since 2019. And if you're looking for something affordable under $350 a week, those rentals have vanished, down 82% since 2020. The numbers are cooked, the stories are heartbreaking, and if you're a renter in Perth right now, you're fighting a battle that's rigged against you from day one. In this video, in breaking down exactly why Perth's rental crisis is the worst it's been in decades, who's suffering the most, and what, if anything, can actually fix this mess. Let's get into it, right? Let's start with the numbers because they tell a story of complete market failure. According to RAI data, Perth's rental vacancy rate hit an all-time low of 0.6% back in late 2023. To put that in perspective, a balanced market is considered 2.5% to 3.5%. At 0.6%, you're talking less than one available rental for every 150 properties. That's not a market, that's a crisis. By January 2025, the vacancy rate had crawled up to 2%, at the highest it had been since mid-2020. That sounds like progress, right? Except it's still nowhere near balanced. And for the 18 months before that, renters were living through absolute hell. By March 2025, where it hit 2.5% for the first time since 2019. Still tight, still brutal for anyone trying to find a place, but here's where it gets worse. According to the Bank West Curtin Economic Centre, Perth added just 694 new rental dwellings in the 18 months to March 2024. In that same period, Perth's population grew by 119,000 people. Do the maths, that's nowhere near enough. Perth is now short by 7,700 rental properties just to keep up with population growth. Median house rents hit $680 a week in mid-2025, up from $370 a week back in 2020. That's a $310 per week increase in just 5 years for units. We're looking at $650 a week, up from around $320 if you were paying rent in 2020 and you're still in Perth now. Your rent has nearly doubled. CoreLogic data shows Perth is now the second most expensive capital to rent in Australia, behind only Sydney. A typical dwelling is going for $721 a week. Annual rent growth hit 4.9% over the year to June 2025. Not as insane as previous years, but still climbing when it should be stabilizing. And here's the real kicker. Affordable rentals under $350 a week have dropped 82% since 2020. 82%. They've basically disappeared off the map. Only 39% of renters now say they find their housing costs affordable. That means 6 out of 10 renters are in some form of housing stress. So who's coping the worst? Everyone. Seriously, it doesn't matter if you're a single mom, a student, a key worker, or someone on a disability pension. Perth's rental crisis is crushing people from every angle. Let me tell you about Lexi Sargent. She's been hunting for a rental for weeks after getting a notice to vacate. 5 years ago, she was paying $290 a week for a 2-bedroom unit in a nice area near the river. Then it jumped to $320 before the place was sold. Now she's looking at around double that for the same quality. Rental prices feel overwhelming, she told media. Even very basic apartments are being listed at rates that would take up most of my weekly income. And when she shows up to inspections, even the quieter ones have significant competition. It's stressful, it's disheartening, and it's happening across the entire city. Then there's Elizabeth Wright, a 38-year-old single mother on income support. She's been forced to plan living in a ute because she can't afford anything in Perth's rental market. She's literally preparing to sleep in a car park, figuring out how to condense life into a vehicle because there are no affordable rentals left. That's not hyperbole. That's a mom who can't have her daughter live with her because she doesn't have a roof over her head, according to Shelter War CEO Kath Snell. Renters right across Western Australia are struggling to secure affordable, safe and quality homes. We continue to hear about renters facing long queues for viewings, she said, and once a property is secured, too many must sacrifice essentials, like food and medical care, just to pay the rent. Let that sink in. People are choosing between paying rent and buying groceries, between keeping a roof over their head and getting medical treatment. The data backs this up. The Bank West Curtin Economic Centre found that 210,000 Western Australian households now view their housing as unaffordable, up from 110,000 just 2 years ago. In 2022, that's an additional 100,000 families pushed into housing stress in 24 months. Key workers, nurses, teachers, emergency responders are struggling to find rentals anywhere near where they work. Students are competing with professionals for the same tiny pool of properties, and if you're on any kind of income support, you're basically locked out of the market entirely unless you're willing to share with 5 housemates in the outer suburbs. 1 in 5 renters report damp in their homes. More than half report cracks in walls or ceilings. You're paying record rents for declining quality because landlords know you've got nowhere else to go, and homelessness, it's skyrocketing. According to the most recent census, 9,729 people were experiencing homelessness in WA in 2021, a 4% increase from the previous census. That includes 2,315 people sleeping rough in the last financial year. Nearly 25,000 people sought help from specialist homelessness services, an 18% jump over the decade. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like trying to find a rental in Perth right now. Spoiler, it's an absolute circus. In August 2025, a video went viral showing 92 people queuing up to inspect a $650 a week property in Osborne Park, 92 people for one 2-bedroom unit. The property manager Jules Blackwell said it wasn't even that unusual anymore for the medium properties. "I would say I don't see it dying down anytime soon." She told media the property was priced properly in a good central area, a bit smaller with less maintenance, and that's exactly what renters are competing for. It got snapped up after one home open, as most do, but it gets worse. Earlier in 2025, a rental inspection in Bentley attracted 140 people through the door for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment asking $400 a week. 140 people. The listing agent Lynn Kelly said she'd never seen anything like it in 20 years of real estate. The property ended up going for a little bit more than asking price, meaning renters were bidding against each other, even though rent bidding is technically banned under WA's new tenancy laws, and it's not just one or two suburbs. This is happening citywide. In Caversham, an NRS property initially attracted 65 attendees across 2 home opens in December 2024. After the office closed for Christmas, inquiries surged to over 200 tenants waiting for the next inspection. In less desirable outer suburbs, the competition is insane. Renters are showing up with resumes, reference letters, cover letters, explaining why they're the perfect tenant. Some are offering to pay months of rent in advance just to secure a place, which, by the way, is also technically not allowed under the new laws. But desperation makes people break rules. Property managers are reporting that even properties in outer suburbs like Wirrabokata and Molly, which used to be the affordable options, are now hotly contested. Inner city areas like East Perth, Learville and Fremantle, forget about it unless you're earning well above the median income. CoreLogic data shows properties are leasing in a median of 8 to 10 days in mid-range suburbs. In high-demand areas closer to the city, it's even faster. If you're not at the first home open with a completed application in hand, you've already lost. So what the hell is driving this rental catastrophe? It's a perfect storm of factors that have been building for years. Factor 1, population boom. Western Australia's population is growing at 2.4% annually, the fastest in the country. We brought in roughly 70,000 to 90,000 new people in the past year alone. Perth recorded positive interstate migration of over 12,000 people, with people fleeing Sydney and Melbourne for jobs and lifestyle overseas. Migration is also surging as Australia opens back up post-COVID. All these people need somewhere to live, and a huge chunk of new arrivals start as renters, either because they're young or they're relocating for work or they're waiting to buy. That's tens of thousands of new people competing for rentals every single year. Factor to construction collapse. Here is the brutal reality. Perth is building at half the rate it did in 2015, according to SQM Research Managing Director Lewis Christopher. Dwelling commencements are way down. We're completing around 16,800 to 20,000 new homes a year, but we need at least 24,000 to 27,000 just to keep up with population growth. Construction delays have doubled average build times to over 15 months. Supply chain issues from COVID, labor shortages and rising material costs have all combined to slow everything down. Even when new builds do get completed, they're often snapped up by owner-occupiers or investors who don't rent them out immediately. The Bank West Curtin Economic Centre found that just 694 rental dwellings were added in Perth over 18 months, while the population increased by 119,000. That's not a shortage, that's a catastrophic failure to deliver housing supply. Factor 3, investor exodus. During the height of COVID, many investors pulled out of the Perth rental market. Some sold, some converted to short-term accommodation like Airbnb. Some just held properties empty because dealing with tenants during lockdowns was too hard. That sucked thousands of rentals out of the market, and even though investor activity is picking back up now, drawn by Perth's 4.4% to 4.6% rental yields, the best in the country, it takes time for that stock to come back online. Plus, investors are now competing with first home buyers for the same properties, which doesn't help. Supply factor for tenancy law changes in 2024 to 2025. WA introduced major tenancy reforms. Rent bidding was banned. Landlords can now only increase rent once every 12 months. Tenants have stronger rights around pets and minor modifications. Disputes go to a commissioner for resolution. Now, these reforms are good for tenants in theory. They stop exploitative practices, but some property investors have responded by pulling out of the market entirely or being more selective about who they rent to. Anecdotally, some property managers report landlords are holding properties off the market or waiting for perfect tenants rather than renting quickly. The reforms also removed No grounds evictions in some cases, which again is good for tenant security, but it's made some landlords more cautious about who they lease to. WA and NT are still two of the only jurisdictions allowing no grounds evictions in certain circumstances. But the changes have shifted landlord behavior. Factor 5. Affordable housing vanished. Affordable rentals under $350 a week, the ones that key workers, students and low-income families rely on, have dropped 82%. Since 2020 they've been renovated, sold, demolished or had rents jacked up to market rates. Inner suburbs used to have pockets of affordable stock, not anymore, rental bond data shows. These properties are disappearing fastest from inner and middle ring suburbs. Renters are being pushed to outer growth corridors like Baldivis, Ellenbrook and beyond, where jobs and services are scarce. Factor 6. Short-term rentals. Airbnb and short-term accommodation have pulled rentals out of the long-term market. A property owner can make more money renting a place for $200 a night to tourists than leasing it for $650 a week to a long-term tenant. Some estimates suggest thousands of properties that could be long-term rentals are now short-term listings. The WA government has been looking at regulating short-term rentals, but so far nothing concrete has been implemented. Every property converted to Airbnb is one less rental for someone trying to find a home. So, what happens next? Is there any light at the end of this tunnel, or are we stuck in crisis mode for years? The good news, if you can call it that, is vacancy rates have inched up from 0.6% in late 2023 to 2.5% by March 2025. Re says if current trends continue, Perth could reach a balanced market of 2.5% to 3.5% vacancy by mid to late 2025, but experts are skeptical. Bank West Curtin Economic Center researcher Alan Duncan warned that even with urgent action, relief is at least 12 to 18 months away, with rental costs unlikely to stabilize until 2026. Why supply is still lagging way behind demand. Population growth isn't slowing down, construction is still catching up from COVID delays. And even with new builds coming online, it takes time for them to hit the rental market. Property analysts like those at KPMG predict mid-single-digit rental growth through 2025, around 3% to 4% annually. That's down from the double-digit growth of 2023 to 2024, but it's still growth. Rents aren't coming down, they're just going up slower. Claire Christensen from Rent Choice said the market is finding a healthier middle ground, with rent steady and demand still strong, but tenants becoming more selective. Properties in overbuilt areas, like some new house and land estates in the outer suburbs, are taking longer to rent and seeing downward pressure on prices, but established suburbs with limited new development are still tight and expensive. And here's the uncomfortable truth: Perth's rental crisis won't truly end until one of two things. It happens: either we massively ramp up housing construction to 24,000 plus new homes per year and sustain it for years, or population growth slows dramatically. Neither of those things are likely in the short term. Shelter WA CEO Kath Snell is calling for rent caps, converting vacant buildings into supported accommodation and committing to 5,000 new social and affordable homes every year. But those are long-term solutions that won't help someone looking for a rental this week. If you're searching for a rental in Perth right now, here's the reality check. It's going to be hard, it's going to be competitive, and you need to be strategic. Option 1. Move fast and be prepared if you find a property that's even remotely suitable. Apply immediately, have your documents ready: ID, proof of income, rental references, cover letter. Don't wait. Properties are leasing in 8 to 10 days. If you hesitate, you've lost option to expand your search area. If you're locked into inner suburbs, you're competing with hundreds of people for every property. Look at middle ring and outer suburbs, places like Wanneroo, Balcata, Molly, Armadale, Kwinana. Yes, you'll have longer commutes, but you'll actually find something. Option 3. Consider share housing. The data shows tenant household sizes are increasing. People are doubling up, tripling up, sharing with friends or family to afford rent. It's not ideal, but it's reality. If you can't afford a place on your own, sharing might be your only option. Option 4. Stay put if you can. If you're currently renting and your landlord hasn't jacked up your rent too badly, do everything you can to stay. Moving right now means entering the rental thunderdome. Talk to your landlord or property manager. Many would rather keep a good tenant at a slightly lower rent than risk a vacancy and reletting fees. Option 5. Know your rights. The new tenancy laws give you some protections. Rent can only be increased once every 12 months. Rent bidding is banned. If you think a rent increase is excessive, you can apply to the magistrate's court for review, and if you're in arrears, the WA government's rent relief program can provide one-off payments and negotiation support. The message is different: be competitive, be fair, and don't be greedy. The market is softening slightly. If you overprice your property, it will sit empty. Tenants are becoming more selective and empty weeks cost you money. Fair market rent gets you good long-term tenants. Gouging gets you vacancies. Perth's rental crisis is real, it's brutal, and it's affecting hundreds of thousands of people. Vacancy rates that should never have dropped below 2% hit 0.6%. Rents that were affordable 5 years ago have nearly doubled, and the affordable stock that low-income earners rely on has basically vanished. 92 people queuing for one rental inspection. Single mothers planning to sleep in their cars. Key workers choosing between rent and medical care. This isn't just statistics, this is human suffering caused by policy failure and market dysfunction. The fundamentals driving this crisis are still in place: population growth outpacing construction supply shortages, investor caution and affordable housing disappearing until we build more homes, a lot more homes, and until those homes actually hit the rental market. This crisis isn't going away. The vacancy rate ticking up to 2.5% is progress, but it's not relief. Renters are still fighting for scraps, and unless governments at every level step up with serious investment in social housing, fast-tracked approvals and incentives for build-to-rent developments, we're looking at years more of this nightmare. If you're renting in Perth, you're not alone. Hundreds of thousands are going through the same struggle. Stay informed, know your rights, and keep pushing for change, because the current situation is unacceptable, unsustainable, and frankly un-Australian. I'll be covering Perth's rental and property market every week, breaking down the data, exposing what's happening on the ground, and holding decision makers to account. Subscribe to Australia Future Desk so you don't miss the next video, where I'll be diving into which suburbs are seeing the biggest rent increases and which ones might actually offer renters some relief. Thanks for watching. See you in the next